afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me again to speak with you. What a difference a year makes. Last year, we were talking about how big and exciting and the hiring market was, and how, it was a great opportunity for you guys coming out of school with your technical skills to get a job. It's still a good time, but it's different. And so what I wanted to talk to you guys today is about the complete package. How to make sure that when you're presenting yourself for a job, you're presenting that complete package and you're able to get yourself the job that you're looking for, even in this market. So I'm sure everyone has heard about this thing called COVID and is aware of what COVID has done to the job market and the negative impacts. So in 2020, right now, last October, the unemployment rate was 6.9%, which was down from the highest when COVID's peaked, but that's double from what it was in 2019. So what does that mean to you? Well, when the job market and unemployment rate is so high, it means there's a lot of people going for a job. So right now, the average position is having about 200 applicants apply for a single position. So if you're one of the 200, how do you shine? How do you get to be in that interview pool? How are you going to be able to make sure that you can get that job and you're not a statistic in this unemployment bucket, but you're a employed bucket? And it's also important to know there's different industries that have been impacted by COVID the most. So, for instance, airlines, that industry is being devastated. Casinos and gaming. So I don't know if any of you guys had gone to Vegas before. Vegas is not the same right now because of it. Leisurely facilities, so Disneyland. Disneyland's a local to us, but you can see it's still closed and it's unsure of when it's going to open again. So there are a lot of industries that have been impacted. So it's important to know as you're starting to think about your career, okay, not only what role do I want, but what industry do I want to work in that isn't as negatively impacted as others. So again, I can get my choices in jobs. I can have more opportunities available to me. And I would love for this to be interactive. So what are you guys' thoughts? Have you guys heard about the unemployment statistics or about the industries that have been impacted the most? What do you guys think? And if you're speaking, I just need to go off mute. Okay.
I haven't really heard much about any of these statistics, so it's really good to kind of see a number behind the actual impact that this has been having.
Yeah, it's important because let's say that you're applying for a job and you want a job in one of these areas, you're going to know, wow, I haven't got the position that I wanted. Mizar, I hope I pronounced your name. What do you want to say? What are your thoughts?
It's Maziar. And actually, it's an interesting point that you made because I was offered a contract position at for a hotels, well, a platform for hotels, but so I was supposed to start the day before yesterday, or yesterday actually, but they told me because COVID hit again and we don't know what the future will hold, they had to put the job on hold. And since they were related to the traveling industry, so yeah, there is definitely a lot of uncertainty right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, hotels are part of the impact as well because people like airlines aren't flying anymore. And they're not going to travel to leisurely activities like Disney World or Disneyland. So you are unfortunately impacted by that. That's why it is also very important that you know, okay, so these are the industries that are hit the hardest. What are the ones that aren't, which I'm going to show you in the next slide. But what are the ones that aren't, and how do I prepare myself for this? How do I get employed in this market? And how do I become the employed rate and not the unemployed rate? So it's important to know this information as we start to move forward. Any other questions or comments before we move forward?
I just had a quick question about the slides. I don't know if it's me, but I'm not seeing the slideshow. Is there a slideshow I should see?
Yes. Can anyone else see my screen?
Yeah, I think Michael said
you have to switch it over. I don't know, like my iPad switched it to just your face.
Okay, let me try. I
It
just
worked. No, I can see your screen now. So
Okay.
I just switched the setting. And everyone else's, I can see it in the chat too.
Okay, great. All right. I was like, that is going to be very difficult if you guys can't see what I'm talking about. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks for help.
No problem. Any other comments before we move on? All right. So what can we do? What are some focus areas in today's job market? So one thing, especially from a technology perspective, IT has the most availability to work remotely than any other position. And so consider working remotely. Like I tell some of my clients, especially who have the flexibility in their roles, when you're doing a job search, instead of just putting like, okay, I live in Chino Hills, this is the area and zip code I'm going to, put remote first. And what will happen is you'll see all of the remote positions open. So consider working remotely for new positions. That means you need to be open to working in different time zones. So you might be able to get a position remotely, but it's back in the Midwest or back east. And so instead of having a later start or a normal start for California, you'll have an earlier start, but an earlier end date. But it opens up the market to so many different opportunities for you. Right now, 55% of companies are offering some remote work because the stay-at-home orders have been so vast and companies had to readapt to it. A lot of people are working full-time and considering keeping full-time as a applicable part of their basis. So 18% of the workforce was working full-time remotely before COVID hit. And 77% of people who are working remotely say that they're more productive. So those are things to consider that will give you a wider range of different opportunities than what you could have before, especially if you live close to some of the industries that are most heavily impacted like we talked about. Now, there have been industries that have not been negatively impacted and actually are booming right now. Real estate is booming because they've lowered the mortgage rates. So anything in real estate, from mortgage companies to lenders to real estate agents and those companies, they're hiring like crazy right now, especially in IT, because they are wanting to put a lot more things online and remotely. Insurance, both life insurance and property and casualty, and then of course healthcare. So hospitals, different insurance healthcare providers need IT work because they're having more and more doctors' visits online, more and more access to patients' information online, and so they need those as well. So what are your guys' thoughts on working remotely or maybe looking into these specific industries more? Boyle, what are your thoughts? Go ahead and speak.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I actually had a question. Is it okay if I ask that right now?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So you were mentioning how a lot of the companies are now looking for, remote positions. And, this is, due to the fact that COVID's still going on. But what are your, I guess, thoughts on the possibility that, let's say if we're working remotely, but the job is like in like a different state, and then when COVID calms down, and then they're looking to bring, I guess, the employees back into office, do you think that would happen like in the near future, within like a year, or I was just wondering on your thoughts.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So these positions that are posting remote are permanently remote positions. So that's why it's really important when you put where. Now, when you're doing a normal search, you might see some positions that are saying, hey, we're based in like Anaheim. But when we're based in Anaheim, it's remote on a temporary basis. So when you're reading the job descriptions, it's really important to see if it is remote, if it's a temporary basis, and if that commute is available and workable for you versus it's a remote position now. And you will just be working out of your home for forever as long as you're in that role.
Okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem. Someone else had a question or a statement?
No, sorry, moment passed.
Okay. All right. Andrew, do you want to speak? Question or statement?
Just a statement. I mean, I think The ability to work remotely was one of the reasons why I kind of looked towards web development as a possibility for me, because I previously I worked in sports, so something that has also been negatively affected, at least for like the actual like team staff.
Yeah.
So we haven't been, or it's not as easy to work in that field remotely. Just because, especially my job was very focused on like face-to-face meetings and like actually being at the games and working there. So I think that this is just a blessing, really, that we've all decided to take a leap into this field. But it's also like the most conducive for working remotely, and that even if there are a lot of outside factors happening, that the job market is also, because of your ability to work remotely, it's also the least negatively affected, at least.
Correct. So this is a positive in spite of all the negativity out there, that, hey, the skills that I'm bringing to the table can still get jobs, can still get a variety of jobs, not just limited to certain locations. And there's industries that might not have considered before, but that are hiring like crazy, and that can give me the opportunity to grow my career even in this market. So let's talk about what employers are looking for, what they used to look for, and what they're looking for now. So in the past, even pre-COVID, employees were looking for, what's your education, what's your experience, and then what are your skills as it relates to the job. So like, what are your technical skills? What type of code can you do? What type of testing can you provide? What type of analysis? They were looking for those, like I would call them hard skills. That was what everyone was promoting. So if someone was asking you, hey, are you trying to find a job? Talk about your experience, talk about your education, talk about your skills, and that's it. And that's all you need to really focus on, and you'll get the job. That is not the market, especially today. Now employers, and let me move this really quickly. Now employers are looking for that full, complete package. So they want to, of course, to know your education experience, but that's not it. They also want soft skills, especially today, because soft skills like communication, if we can't see face to face, and I need you to be an effective communicator so we can work together, that's going to be critical for us to be able to work. If you're working from home and you don't have a strong work ethic, and I can't see that you are working 100% of the time, and you don't partner with your team, you don't actively try to solve problems, those are some skills that are really critical in the market and what people are looking for. And a lot of times, these are not the primary focus in education, and these are things that are often overlooked when you're talking about experience. But these are some of the things that you'll have to promote now to set yourself aside in the market today. So what are your guys' thoughts about these soft skills versus what we were talking about before?
I start my sauce with some carrots, onions, and fennel for the merguez. I take the casing off to make it a ground meat. First, I'm going to get started.
Have any of you guys heard of how important these are? So Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's one of the big things that Learning Fuse has really harped on, is that, you can have all the knowledge and the know-how and the hard skills, as you say, but if you can't work well within a team, if you can't communicate, like, all of that is useless. And I think that in the past, like you said, like, education was a big thing, but then now we're seeing, like, because everyone goes to college, that doesn't necessarily that doesn't necessarily automatically qualify you for the job that you're applying for just because of the school that you went to or the degree that you got. It's really, what kind of skills do you have right now that a company can use? And that's why we all are currently going through this program or finished it, because we realize that, we need to have these skills, particularly in web development. And education is not as important as it once was. It's more, what can you provide? And It doesn't really matter, where you went to school or what previous experience you had. It's more like what can you bring of value to a company that they can use and they can grow.
Absolutely. Great points. Boyle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with communication. So before I joined Learning Fuse, I was, working remote. And I think in that time of working remotely, I think it really enforced the idea of being an effective communicator both verbally but also in a written format, especially since you can't work with your coworkers or teammates face to face. A lot of times we're just kind of messaging each other. But if the question or if the task that we need to complete isn't written in an effective way, it definitely, one, drops in productivity, but it just kind of, I think, in a certain way, even team morale will kind of go down because it's just so hard to work in an environment where it might be hard to understand everything in a written format.
You have excellent points. And even when you're in the job searching in the job market, these skills come out very quickly. So imagine I'm a hiring manager and I'm looking at someone's resume and I'm not seeing good communication skills. I'm having trouble understanding. They're not talking about teamwork. They're not talking about their transparency or anything else. It's just what they specifically did at a job. Versus I look at somebody else and I see, wow, they are a team player, excellent communication skills, they've been assertive and led these different things. It really makes a difference and makes you stand out and be the one who gets that interview, who gets that job offer. So Melissa, what are your thoughts?
Yes. Well, I like that we are talking about, or Boyle raised the point of morale, because that's really coming to the forefront in this constantly changing time. Change is stress, or, in psychology, like stress is change. So maybe in the past, you could get away with things where, like I've been in a work environment where certain people could get away with things just because they were really experienced or really high up. And it granted them a certain level of immunity because there was a certain system in place, and sure, it could have been better or healthier or whatever, but hey, it worked. But that's kind of all thrown out the window right now with things constantly changing and constantly shifting. That kind of leadership style doesn't work anymore because it creates and adds to the stress and depresses the morale and the productivity of employees. So now we're shifting over to the need for more EQ over IQ.
Yes.
If you don't have morale, you don't have commitment, you don't have anything from your team. So those kinds of problem-solving skills, not just for technical problems, but for things that are just coming up on the fly, like, oh my gosh, we have another lockdown, now what do we do? Those kinds of things is so important now. It's really priority number one.
You hit the nail on the head, Melissa. Like, you have to be flexible in today's environment. You have to be willing to solve new problems that the constant change is bringing. And again, most of these aren't problems with the job or the project that you're working on. It's how am I going to work with each other? How are we going to be a team? How are we going to bond? How are we going to keep our company culture impactful so we all feel like we're on the same team, have the same goals, and going in the same direction? So all of these skills, the more that you can promote these and show that this is part of your complete package, the more you're going to win in this job market. And these are things not just to say, but anytime someone is talking to you about a position, making sure you recognize the importance of all of these items. So let's talk about the employers now, the complete package. So in the job market before, the job title. I know so many of my past clients who'd like, well, the job title is the most important to me. So I want to take a quick poll. So let me share this real quick so I can see faces. Can you raise your hand if you think the job title is the most important aspect in your job search right now? Go ahead, raise your hand if you, especially if you have your computer screen on. Raise your hand if job title is the most important thing. I see 0 hands. Okay. Oh, okay. So I do have 1 hand. So 1 hand. So anyone else, raise your hand if job title is the most important thing. 2. Okay. So I got 2 hands. Okay. Now, raise your hand if you think the role that you do is the most important thing.
Daphne and I have a tough decision. We're going to need a moment to discuss.
Okay, I got several hands raised. Yes, yes. So what you'll find today is companies will have so many different job titles for very similar roles because job titles aren't as most experienced. So you might say, okay, I saw a position for a developer. And I also saw a position for an engineer. I also saw a position for a front-end developer or a JavaScript developer. Like the job titles have become less of the focus and employers are really saying, okay, what is this person going to do? What is their role on the team? How are they going to add to what we're looking for? So that's part of the things that have changed. Salary also was a very important factor. It still is a big factor, but it's not necessarily the only factor in an employer's complete package down. So as we talked about, flexibility. Do I have the option of working remotely? I don't think anyone today would say, okay, I'm only going to work for a company that I can work in person at, and they don't have any remote options. Because unfortunately, what we've seen is those people have been impacted the most by layoffs or impacted the most by furloughs. My son has some friends who work for Disneyland, and they love Disney, and they've been out of work for almost a year now. And I've asked him, I'm like, isn't it time to kind of consider positions that you don't have to be there and present? And he was like, wow, that's the first time I've ever thought about that. So now in today's world, we need to be looking at the complete package from an employer's perspective, not just job title, not just salary, but other things. So I want to hear your thoughts about these 2 items and how this used to be what employers showed. How important are these 2 things versus some of the other things that we're going to talk about to you? Okay, so go ahead. I can't see who raised their hand first, so please go ahead and speak.
Yeah, I'll go. I think for me, once again, I guess I'll bring up my past in sports is that sports positions, at least on the business side, they have all this flowery language in terms of like what the name is, but in actuality, a lot of the times, like the roles are way more diminished than what the job title suggests. So for me, I kind of I've been conditioned to see past that. Like, yeah, that sounds nice, but what are you doing?
Yes.
So, and also, at least early on in, I personally, I do put some, I feel like we all need to have some kind of standard with salary. I agree. I know that coming out of a boot camp, especially, we should temper our expectations. But at the same time, for me at least, it is something that I keep an eye on just because, if I'm going to be doing all these things in a specialized role, then I do have some kind of standard of compensation that I would like to eventually, like how, not only am I looking at the pay, but I'm also looking like what does the organizational ladder look like? How can I grow my career here if I want to stay here, or is there a hard ceiling? Because
Yeah.
I worked for teams, I'm not going to name names, but I worked for teams where I was not only paid poorly, but there was nowhere for me to go because it was just me and then my manager, and then that was it. The only way I could go up was if I, replaced who my manager was, which I in no way could do. So that's really, I think organizational growth is also a huge thing for me because I want to see if I like the place that I work at, but I can't move up, then there's no incentive for me to, or there's not a lot of incentive for me to take the time to interview there with the hopes of staying there long term. Whereas, if a place that maybe it doesn't pay as well in the beginning, but presents you with a lot of options in terms of, oh, well, in 1 or 2 years, you can move up to this position with this kind of pay raise, with these kind of benefits, with these kind of options. Like that's, for me at least, way more enticing than a job that might pay you more, but then there's really nowhere to go from there.
Great points. Does anyone else have any questions or comments about this before we move on?
I don't know if Mazi was going to jump in, but something I wanted to throw in about, salary, and this is unique to, our students. Sorry for everybody who's outside of California, but companies can't ask you what you're currently making. So you're in a much stronger position when it comes down to, that negotiation period than a lot of other people. So, yay, socialism in California.
Yes. So, and negotiation of the salary and understanding the salary range for the type of roles that you're going for helps you be able to ask for things that are relevant and good point. So there's other things like Andrew kind of elicited to that now make that employee package so important. One big thing is company culture. What is a company culture like? Am I going to like working here? Do I have opportunities to grow? Am I going to be mentored? Am I going to be, able to learn new things inside and outside of my role and have opportunities to expand my career into different areas? That has become so important, even more so today, because company culture when you're working at home is going to have a much bigger impact than it ever had before. Amazon and Google have really started changing that company culture where, okay, we're going to make it fun at work. We're going to actually bring games and we're going to have free food. We're going to have, employees have access to gyms and all of these different things to kind of help that promote that you as an employee matter, not the work that you do. And that's one of the biggest changes. It's not just about the work that you do and you're considered a resource. Company cultures who really value the employee see you holistically and they're like, I want to make sure they're not hungry. I want to make sure that they're happy. Hey, if they're too stressed out, I want to be able to make sure that they can relax. So that has become important. Like TJ had mentioned, salary is something that can be negotiated right now. So before, years ago, they would ask you what you're making and they're like, oh, they're only making this much? I don't have to pay you as much anymore. So I'm going to give you that baseline. Where now that can't be asked. And so you can come into the table and saying, I know, like for instance, hey, I'm a first level web developer. I've looked and I know what that web developer for this zip code, what that range is. So when we ask about what salary I want, I'm going to now talk about that salary range. I'm going to be flexible within that range, but now that's where I'm going to start at versus I'm starting at where I was before. And if I was getting paid $20,000 less than that minimum range, I'm going to be stuck in a bad place. People are also looking for bonuses and stock and saying, okay, thank you for my base level salary, but what are other things that you're going to do to, again, encourage me to work and go above and beyond and work? So employee benefits, time off is becoming more important. Those paid benefits like gym membership, education, other things. I know some companies that actually have masseuses come into the office because they want their employees not to be so stressed, and office perks. And today, more importantly than ever, flexibility options for working. So can I work from home? Can I be flexible with the hours that I'm working? Can I be flexible with the days of the week that I'm working? Today, especially as the market continues to change, these are things that are becoming more relevant. So as people are working from home more and more, they're like, well, I don't have to leave at 6 o'clock to beat hours of traffic. I can actually start working earlier and get off earlier. So I know some of my clients who now start their workday at 6 and end at 3, or start their workday at 9 or 10 and end later, just depending on who they're working it with and what areas of the company that they have team members on. So having that flexibility within a job is becoming really, really important. So I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts about these as being the complete package? And when you're in the interview process, have any of you guys asked about these things or talked about these things?
Go back to prison. Hi, folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important.
I'll just jump in. Sorry. I think that definitely looking at a job as an applicant, looking at all of the different benefits and things that they offer is super, super important, because two equivalent jobs at a salary of 50, or if you have a job at a salary of 50,000, one at 45,000, but they offer like $10,000 worth of benefits in their package with their health care, their 401k matching, or bonuses or things like that, then that would be the better option. And it's hard to put a dollar amount on some things like office perks or a nice office environment. There was something that I read one time which said that your daily commute to work adds like, I think it was like $20,000 to the amount of money that you need to be earning on top of your salary in order to feel the same level of satisfaction as somebody who lives like 5 minutes away by walking.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's hidden benefits and things like a good company culture. For sure.
Absolutely. The one metric that I just found out is people who work at home now save an average of $5,000 from gas and mileage and even food than they did before, when they're working in the office. So consider that another factor in options that you're looking for. Someone else wanted to speak or ask questions?
Yeah, I just thought it was like these points are actually really good to consider. Something that I didn't really put too much thought into, to be honest. But yeah, when you do consider it, like there's all of these things that can technically transform or kind of translate into a monetary benefit or like an intangible benefit, as you were kind of talking about. And yeah, like this idea of, you know, I guess kind of looking at it in this way of like what, you know, the full, you know, package is from a company is kind of, we're also in a sense evaluating the company in the same way that they are evaluating us. Like it's just a different criteria. But yeah, like it's definitely things to think about.
Yeah, I tell my clients when you're on an interview, you are interviewing them as just as much as they're interviewing you, because you have to look and say, am I going to be happy and successful here? Is this company going to allow me to thrive and grow? Or is it just going to be a paycheck? If it's just going to be a paycheck, there are so many other options out there. So these are all the things that should be considered. I think one other person raised their hand who has a comment or question.
You're interfering with the proper administration of their field.
I have a comment or a question. I guess I'll start with the question. I was once asked kind of just on the fly after being, you know, after this was like a disarming person and we had a good relationship, and then just on the fly they were like, yeah, so how much did you make? Can I ask how much you made before? And I just didn't know how to respond. So could you give an answer? I didn't want to say no. The way they phrased it was so tricky.
Yeah, so that's a good one. That's a sly person, unfortunately. So you can respond like, oh, I made the average for this position in the market. And that's a good, safe way of not saying no, but also not putting yourself in a awkward position where you've now said, oh, I told them, and I might be making so much lower that I'm not going to get this job, or they're going to be like, yes, and they're only going to pay me $1,000 more than I made before. So a good way to say that is like, oh, it's the average. You know, I looked around and I asked around, it's the average amount for this position in this area. That's a safe response.
I really like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Comment on company culture. Another speaker in the past, I think it was at a conference, said one way to gauge company culture is to look at what the company does as much as what they say, and even to look even down to the code and how pull requests are handled. You know, is there feedback in there? What type of feedback is it? You know, find a company on LinkedIn, see if they say that they want diversity, see how diverse it is. So I thought it kind of interesting that you can look through these unusual channels to see the actual behavior of a company.
Yeah, one good thing that I always tell my clients about company culture, their job description is going to be so indicative. So for instance, if you want to know how important a company thinks about their employees, what terminology do they use? Do they talk about employees or do they talk about resources? In their job description, do they talk about, you know, we have flexible options, we want to take care of our employees, we have these flexible benefits, or is it just plain black and white, like these are the benefits that we have? The job description really says a lot, and most people just look at the top paragraph and the bottom paragraph and really don't. I mean, they look at the title and what the position does. The top paragraph and the bottom paragraph in job descriptions typically shares the culture. So when you're looking for a job, take a look at those. And just like Michelle said, or Melissa said, there's lots of other places that you can look, but that's going to be the first indication of, this company really does care about employees. Or like if a company says, this is a good indicator, tight deadlines and aggressive deadlines and being able to work in an aggressive timeline environment. If you're looking for a company culture that is really more flexible and is not very assertive, that's not going to be the culture for you or the company for you. So these are things to look out for and look for based on the type of environment that you want to look for and you want to work for. So any other thoughts or questions before we move on? Okay. So what is your complete package? So this is how you start to stand out in the market. This is how you become, instead of one of the 200 applicants for this position to the person that was actually hired, you need to talk about your professional brand. Who are you? When I look you up, what do I find? How do I know who you are professionally? Your education, your experience, the soft skills that we talked about that are so important, especially now in these days. Networking is going to be critical. Who you know and those professional connections are going to be so helpful in today's market as well. I know a lot of times people are like, oh, we're hiring. And the first thing that they'll do is they'll contact some people that they know who are looking for jobs or who have that skill set and say, hey, are you interested in this position? So those are things that are really important. And of course, your technical skills. So all of these things help you have that complete package that's going to stand out and give you the ability to succeed in the job market today. So you need to be able to articulate these on your resume and your profiles on like LinkedIn, and especially when you're interviewing. If you're tested, you need to demonstrate these skills. And then it's good to get recommendations and endorsements from other people that, yes, if I say that I'm an excellent communicator, people are endorsing that and saying those things about me. So what are your guys' thoughts on this complete package?
Stay more true to the traditional oyster Rockefeller. But the judges do like his flavor. I'm just talking about it, not enough.
So the judges have voted and we have a winner. And the winner is...
One of the things that always, kind of intrigues me about this is you see some of these and it's a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes because you almost worry about having to check all of the boxes. And I think that that's something that, one, we all need to be realistic about. More often than not, it's not going to happen. And then finding which ones, are most important to the company and then which ones you can kind of align with.
Mm-hmm. Great points. What are some of the other thoughts?
One of the circles there, professional brand, is actually kind of interesting because I feel like people nowadays are all trying to promote their own social brand through social networking, and that could be a big contributor to like how people see you as a person. And it's a tool I think that people can utilize to develop this kind of professional brand is how the world is going to see you through these applications. Learning Fuse really promotes LinkedIn as one of these networking resources, but I think that also ties into professional brand because they have us link like our GitHub in a website portfolio, and all of those should kind of promote this idea of you being like a strong developer, coder, communicator, all that jazz.
Yeah, no, those are excellent points. Excellent points. Like LinkedIn is a great place to promote your professional brand, and you can have your own personal websites also linked to your portfolio. So if someone goes and looks at you, they can see, okay, this is who Michael is, and this is what he's bringing to the table. And now about 30% of all jobs allow you to use your LinkedIn profile as your actual application. So it's becoming a very powerful tool. And so again, if someone doesn't have a LinkedIn profile versus I have a LinkedIn profile, I can see what they're bringing to the table with their skills and experience and education. And oh, wow, they have links to their personal site that I can check out. And I see that they've been recommended and endorsed by others versus not. Again, it just gives you that upper hand in that job search. So the more of these things that you do, the more that you can start giving yourself that competitive edge in the job market versus not having that competitive edge. Great points. Any other points or questions?
It was on top of her friend, had a knife to her throat, and a bag over her face. She took 2 major league swings.
Okay. So like TJ mentioned, oh my God, that's a lot of stuff. I don't know how to do that. I'm not sure I can put all of those things in place. That's where we come in. We're breaking the glass. We can help you. That's what I do for my clients. I help my clients with the complete package and making sure that they can have that competitive edge. So you can not only get the job, but get the job that is going to be best for you, that you're going to grow and thrive in. And so to help you, especially in this market, we're offering a 25% discount for each of you. If you want to use our services between now and January 30th, just to sign up, you can go to our website, Breaking the Glass, and enter this promotional code. And you can also read some things that we do from our other clients, some of the other things that we share, but we can help you in this job search and this journey. So any questions before I end this, or comments before I end? William, please. What are your thoughts, comments?
Yeah, well, first, thank you for the presentation. I thought it was really helpful. And then, actually, one question that kind of popped up is, in the beginning, you mentioned how, some of the industries are actually, doing well. So you kind of talked about like real estate and healthcare. Do you think it's ever possible that, of course, for them, job openings are ramping up because of COVID, but if in the future COVID, I guess slows down or kind of normalizes, is there a possibility that they've overhired and then we'll have to cut back?
Not really in those specific industries, because the demand is so there. What's going to happen is competition is going to start to grow in other industries. And so let's say, for instance, I'm in insurance and I don't really like property and casualty insurance. I want to go back to team sports. And now the Anaheim Angels are hiring again. People are vaccinated and I have the opportunity to work with people and not work remote. People are going to start moving to those jobs. So what's going to happen is that competition is going to start to normalize the market, and people are going to go to the industries that they feel relate to them more so versus where they had the most opportunities to get a job.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great question and point. Any other questions or comments?
I was wondering, so, the students have heard me talk about this way too much, networking. And obviously with, COVID and not being able to meet in person, things have changed a little bit. Do you have any favorite, sites other than, Meetup or Eventbrite, or even just kind of tips for people who are trying to network right now?
Yeah, so like based on the area that you want to focus on, I would start looking at some professional organizations that are still having more on-site meetings. I'd also look at LinkedIn. LinkedIn has a lot of different groups that you can start networking in. And so from a LinkedIn perspective, you can start slowly. So joining those groups, seeing what the trends are of what they're talking about, start talking and sharing your ideas and your thoughts about those areas, and then start to become a thought leader in those areas and posting your own things, and starting to attend some of those events. That will start helping grow your network and start showing that, hey, TJ is a leader in this area. I want to network with him, or I have a position available for him and I want to see if he's open for it. So I've had some of my clients who've networked. They were kind of reluctant about it before, but like one of my clients, I encouraged her, this was before Corona, to go to an event, a networking event. And she was just like, I think it's a bunch of fluff. And I was like, just try it. And she went and she was talking to someone. He ended up being the president of a company who was looking for a new architect, and she was an architect. And she ended up getting that position because they networked and hit it off. So don't diminish how important it is to making those connections to people. It might not be immediately valuable, but it can become valuable in the future. Great comments and questions. Anything else?
Well, thanks, Kimberly. Really appreciate it. I wanted to, earlier on when, I was kind of introducing you, the fact that you were, and the statistic that you had been using before,